Hey, this is Anand. Welcome to another edition of the SAT 1500 Plus Masterclass. So in this video, we're going to be talking about those cases where you might be tempted to add a punctuation to a sentence fragment, but no punctuation is necessary. All right. So this specifically applies to the boundaries and transitions topic in the SAT grammar section, which is also known as standard English conventions. Okay. So this is a pretty short topic. There are very few concepts that you need to learn. And towards the end of this video, we're going to be doing some practice questions. So stay on till the very end. And the concepts that you're going to learn in this video is probably going to translate to about 30 to 40 points on the test approximately, depending on the number of questions that they ask. So it's very important that you learn them. All right. And in the description, I've added a link to the playlist because this is part of a series of videos on SAT English grammar. Okay, so go to the playlist, watch the videos in sequence. And the most important thing is you can watch me do, explain concepts, do questions, but this is only going to stick if you practice yourself. Okay, so for practice, I've added a link to Just Logged In. Just go there. You have a number of practice questions that are aligned with all these concepts that we are talking about in these videos. And you also have section tests, full length tests, and so on. All right. So everything that you need to prepare for the SAT. So you can find on Just Logged In, just go there and you can practice. I've added a link to that in the description. All right. So now let's get started. Okay. So one of the most common places where you may be tempted to add a comma and where you don't need one, or places where when you speak, you naturally leave pauses. Okay. So whenever you leave pauses when you naturally speak, you don't have to necessarily add a comma. Okay. In fact, it may be grammatically incorrect. So therefore, when you're reading something, don't automatically assume that you need to add a comma whenever you normally leave these natural pauses in the sentence. Okay, so here are some examples where you should not add commas or any type of punctuation. Okay, so one is between a verb and an object. Okay, like for example, she studied what? Studied the effects of gravity, right? So don't say she studied, comma, the effects of gravity, or she studied the effects of, comma, gravity, or something like that, right? I mean, all this is incorrect. Okay, so you shouldn't be doing any of this. Okay, so just, no punctuation. She studied the effects of gravity. Okay, so similarly, preposition and an object. For example, researchers found a rise in blood glucose. So don't put a comma after researchers found a rise in, comma, blood glucose. So sometimes while talking, for emphasis, we may leave a pause, a brief pause after rise in. Like for example, researchers found a rise in blood glucose. Okay, so maybe we talk like this to give an emphasis, right? But that doesn't translate into a comma when you write. Okay, so therefore there's no comma between a preposition and an object. Now, in a short sentence like this may seem pretty obvious. However, SAT is not going to give you small sentences like this. They're going to give you pretty long sentences, right? So there, it may be quite non-obvious and you might end up adding a comma. Okay, so therefore, when I'm just giving you these examples, I'm taking these short examples, but when we go do exercises or I have a few questions in the following slides, and you will see that they are long sentences, and then some of what we're talking about here may not be very obvious. Okay, so therefore keep this in mind. The other place where you don't add any punctuation is between a subject and a verb, right? Researchers found strong evidence. Okay, so the researchers, don't say the researchers, comma, found strong evidence. Okay, so don't do that, right? Actually, this is subject and verb. You have verb and object. I think the other place where one might add is she studied the effects of comma gravity, for example, right? So don't do that. This is all incorrect. Okay, so this is incorrect too. Linking verb and complement, like for example, don't say Sarah is, or add commas after is or before is. All of this is incorrect. Okay, Ceres is recognized as the largest object in the belt. Okay, so this is all one contiguous sentence without any punctuation. Okay, again, some of these examples you may see that this is all obvious, you don't have to tell me. Yes, that is true, it's obvious, but when you have situations like this in long sentences, this may become non-obvious, and therefore just keep this in mind. Okay, if you remember these technically, then you won't make any mistake. But again, it's hard to remember all of the technical aspects of grammar. So you go by the ear, but just be mindful of the fact that some of the natural pauses that we leave when we speak does not translate to a punctuation when we write it. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. Take this example. Okay, verb and its object. Fans of classic animation should dash meticulous hand-drawn techniques in early Miyazaki films, including the fluid motion in whatever of the Valley of the Wind. Okay, so fans of classic animation should admire the meticulous hand-drawn techniques. Should admire the meticulous, so it has to be continuous, right? It must just be fans of classic animation should admire the meticulous hand-drawn techniques, right? So there's no punctuation between admire and the, or before admire, or whatever, right? Like for example, take the first one. Fans of classic animation should admire. That's almost incomplete, right, as a sentence, right? And therefore, this is obviously incorrect. If you take C, fans of classic animation should admire, comma, the meticulous hand-drawn techniques in early Miyazaki films, comma, including the fluid. Okay, here if you see, this is actually supplementary information set off by a comma, right? And therefore this one has to be a complete clause, right? And admire, that there must be no comma between admire and the here, right? So because it's not like a series, all right? So similarly, D is kind of absurd, right? Fans of classic animation should admire, colon, and then the meticulous. So before the colon, you must have an independent clause, okay, which we do not, right? So therefore, this is incorrect as well, okay? So this is the only correct option, okay? Preposition and an object. Researchers found a noticeable rise in blood glucose after the carbohydrate-rich meal, right? So there's no punctuation after this, right? So these are kind of obvious ones, okay? Now, this one. This is this is where I've seen students make mistakes, okay? So there's a very subtle difference here, and this is probably the most commonly occurring question type in this particular pattern, okay? And that is title and a name, okay? For example, there are two things, okay? Say, the school principal, okay? I'm not going to add any punctuation at all. The school principal, John Doe, received an award on behalf, or received the award maybe, received the award on behalf of the school. Okay, pardon my bad handwriting. Okay, so the school principal, John Doe, received the award on behalf of the school. Okay, and I'm going to write another sentence like this, which is, the physics teacher, James Watson, received the award on behalf of the school, right? So The school principal, John Doe, received the award on behalf of the school. So if you look at the school principal or school headmaster, right, there is only one school principal, right? So therefore, you can just write the school principal received the award on behalf of the school, right? And it'll be perfect, and you know who received the award, right? It must be John Doe because there is only one school principal, and that principal is John Doe, right? Like for example, the president of the United States, right? Whoever the president is at the time that you're watching this video, right? So there's just one person. Okay. So in these cases, what you do is when you say the school principal, then John Doe just becomes additional information, right? You don't need that information to convey the actual idea, right? Because it's obvious. So in this case, you add a comma. Okay. The school principal, comma, John Doe, comma, received the award on behalf of the school. Okay. However, take this case. The physics teacher, James Watson, there could be a number of physics teachers. Okay. Therefore, James Watson is essential information. So when this is essential information, don't add a comma. Okay. So similarly, you could even do this might apply to titles as well. Okay, because many people can hold a certain title, right? And therefore, you need the name. You have to add the name of the person, which is essential information, right? And therefore, don't add a comma. Okay, so this is very important to remember. Okay, you will certainly get one question either in module 1 or module 2 that kind of tests your knowledge of this, right? And many people frequently get this wrong. Okay, so the physics teacher James Hodges, so don't add commas for this. This one you add a comma because there's only one school principal. Okay, or the governor of the state of Oregon, or the prime minister, of the UK or whatever, right? So there can be only one person. Okay, so therefore, there you add a comma, especially if it's current affairs, and you don't have to disambiguate it. Okay, so one holds the title, right? Use commas. The company's CEO, Maria Torres, resigned. Okay, so there can be only one CEO, and therefore, you add the name with commas. If many could hold the title, right? Like for example, American cytogeneticist Barbara McClintock discovered transposable elements. Okay, so there could be several cytogeneticists, and therefore you need a name, okay, to answer which one. Okay, so there's the which one test. If the name answers which one, it is essential, so no commas, right? So this is a great test to do. The school principal, which principal? There is only one principal, right? So therefore you need a comma. However, when you say the physics teacher received the award, then okay, which teacher, which physics teacher? It's normally more than one teacher, and therefore this becomes essential information. All right. So remember this one. Okay, so this is the same example in a complete sentence. The field of maize genetics owes much to American cytogeneticist Barbara McClintock, right? So D is the correct answer. So no comma or any other type of punctuation here. So don't don't be tempted by the comma here. This does not mean you have to add a comma before this. Actually, this comma is added to set off this supplementary information. All right. So look at the next one. In 2015, researchers confirmed gravitational waves using the interferometer LIGO during a coincident detection at two sites, right? So there could be several interferometers, right? So LIGO becomes essential information. So therefore, B is the right answer. Okay, so don't use C, for example. Okay, like using the interferometer, comma, LIGO, comma, okay, something like that. Okay, so this is incorrect. Okay, so use B. All right. Now, this is another one, which is a clause introduced by that. All right. So that is essential. So you should have no comma before it. Like for example, scientists confirmed the fact that weather systems can redirect the insects, right? You don't say that scientists confirm the fact that, comma, or fact, comma, that. All these are incorrect usages, right? So just use that without any punctuation. Einstein defended the idea that time is relative. Astronomers accepted the theory that the Earth orbits the Sun. Okay. So, for example, interpreting measurements of cosmic rays is complicated because of the sun's cycle of activity and the fact that high energy particles can strike Earth's atmosphere in irregular bursts. Okay. So, here the answer is activity and the fact that. Okay. And the reason is because interpreting measurements of cosmic rays is complicated because of the sun's cycle of. So because of the sun cycle of, there are two things. What is it? Because of the sun's cycles of activity. That's one thing. All right. And the fact that high energy particles can strike the Earth's atmosphere in irregular bursts. So there are two reasons for it, right? So one is the sun's cycle of activity and the fact that high energy particles strike Earth's atmosphere in irregular bursts, right? So therefore, there's no comma needed here. Okay. So next one. So when and is joining two nouns, verbs, or phrases, you don't need a comma, right? So for example, she studied biology and chemistry. Okay, and this is wrong. She studied biology, comma, and chemistry is wrong. You can write like she liked apples, oranges, and cherries. This is different. This is punctuating a list. Okay, but whereas this one is different. Okay, so she studied biology and chemistry. However, when you have two independent classes, she studied biology, she taught physics, right? Then when you combine two independent classes, then you combine them with a comma and a fan voice conjunction, which is and in this case. Okay, so we already dealt with this when we did independent classes. So here you need a comma. However, when you have just two items or two phrases, right, and dependent clauses, don't add commas. Okay, like for example, take this case here, right? The sun, because of sun's cycles of activity and the fact that, so these are two things, right? Two phrases or clauses that we are joining. These are not independent clauses though, right? And we don't add a comma in front of the and, right? Like for example, we didn't choose, something like this. Okay. All right. Okay. So the summary, right? Kind of a cheat sheet. So verb, object, preposition, object, subject, verb, all of these guys, don't add a comma between them. Okay. And the title name, do the which one test, right? If only one person can hold it, then you add a comma. If more than one person can hold it, then the name is essentially essential information, right? And therefore, it takes no commas, okay? And no comma before a that clause, okay? And no comma before a coordinating and, like between two items, okay? Not between two independent clauses, okay? Between items, phrases, all that is okay. Not between two independent classes. So between two independent classes, you have to add a comma and a coordinating fan voice conjunction. Okay. No stray colon or semicolon. Like for example, pauses. Okay. So when you make pauses in your natural way of speaking, don't make that a reason to add a comma or any other form of punctuation. That may not be correct. Okay. So be thoughtful about how you use punctuation. Just because you leave a pause doesn't mean you have to add a comma when writing, okay? So grammar works a bit differently, all right? Now it's time to go do some practice questions, all right? So practice questions are very important, and talking about practice is one thing I want to tell you, is that, you can watch me work on some of these questions, but for you to really grasp the concept and be ready to apply this concept, on the test, you have to practice yourself, okay? So the more you practice, the better you're going to get, okay? So for practice, just go to justloggedin.com. Okay, so when you go to Just Logged In, go to Build Skills, and under Standard English Conventions, go to Boundaries, right? You could either do a timed practice test, so you can construct on-demand tests anytime you want, or you can go question by question. So if I click on question by question, just go and hit all patterns, just choose no punctuation necessary, which is what we are discussing right now. So you could go there, click on this, and you can just practice questions from this specific pattern, all right? So you could do that. Or what you can do is go to reading and writing, okay? Standard English Conventions. This is under pattern strategies, right? So go to Standard English Conventions and just click on this pattern. No punctuation necessary. So you have all the notes, everything that we discussed right now, it's here in writing. So you can go read this to refresh your refresh everything that you learned, right? And then hit on the green button, and you can go and practice this pattern. Okay, so you could go do this either way, launch the same practice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to bookmarked questions. I've already bookmarked a few questions, so you could do this too, right? If you encounter a question, say during practice, or even when you're taking a practice test on Just Logged In, or when you're reviewing answers for a practice test, then you can just go click the bookmark icon. It's a star icon, and then everything will be neatly organized for you here based on topic and section. All right, so let's go to boundaries and let's start doing these questions. Okay, so the first question: the Dead Sea Scrolls continue to yield insights into ancient Judaism. However, as Dash One attempts to flatten brittle parchment under bright lights can cause ink to flake and fibers to crack. However, as conservators Ariella, Ben Nunn, and Thomas Evers one attempts to flatten brittle parchment, blah, blah, blah. So it's just saying, however, as conservators, these two people won, okay? So conservators, there are many conservators, right? So you need to be specific, right? And therefore, these names are essential information, and therefore, you cannot have commas here. So no punctuation. So, however, as conservators, Ariella, Ben Nunn, and Thomas Evers, one attempts to flatten brittle parchment, blah, 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 right? So C is the correct answer. So remember this rule, all right? So when you're talking about names and a title, do the which one test, right? So when they say, however, as conservators, there could be many. So it fails the which one test, and therefore this becomes essential information, all right? Next one. After swapping drumheads, percussionist Ravi Patel ran through a rapid snare etude. So he found that he liked the response of tighter heads for quick rolls. Okay, so he found that he liked the response. He liked the response of tighter heads for quick rolls. So there must be no punctuation here, right? Because this is the verb and the object of it, right? So therefore, don't add any punctuation, right? So D is the correct answer. Okay, next one. In 1954, novelist Hannah Lopez, who had published several slim story collections but no sweeping narratives, completed a novel that critic Deshaun Kim contends braids migration myths with kitchen table realism. Okay, So novel that critic Deshaun Kim contends. Okay, this is a critic and his name, right? So there are many critics, so you need the name. So the name is essential information, right? So therefore, when a title precedes the name, and if it is not a unique title, then don't add comma. So this one is wrong, like critic Deshaun Kim contents. So this is wrong. Okay, and similarly, these two are incorrect as well, right? So this is the only correct answer, right? Critic Deshaun Kim contents. Okay. Leah Torres, a novelist and teacher, wanted to support new voices. In 2016, she joined Ink Circle, a community writing workshop that helps first generation college students shape their personal narratives. Okay, so we know that that must not be preceded by a comma, right? So that was a rule that we learned. So in 2016, she joined Ink Circle, a community writing workshop that helps first generation college students. So A is the correct answer. Okay, so you cannot do this one, workshop comma, that is incorrect. Community writing workshop helps. This is not even grammatically correct. It even fails the ear test, right? It doesn't even sound right. Okay, and the same thing here also. Okay, so all right, next question. Deep focus earthquakes, which occur hundreds of kilometers below Earth's surface, challenge standard models of rock failure. In a 2018 paper, subduction zone seismologist Lena Okafor, okay, so this one again, subduction zone seismologist Lena Okafor, so there should be no comma before, because there are many seismologists and Lena Okafor is one of them, and that becomes essential information. Okay, so therefore there cannot be a comma between seismologist and the name. Now the question is, should I have a comma after it, right? So subduction zone Lena Okafor, subduction zone seismologist Lena Okafor used high resolution tomography. So this is again a subject and a verb. So therefore, there can be no comma after Lena Okafor as well. So therefore, D is the correct answer. So subduction zone seismologist Lena Okafor used high resolution tomography. Okay, so therefore D is the correct answer. Let's go to the next question. In 2012, following a major renovation, the Poetry Foundation in Chicago launched a mentorship program for teen writers. Okay, so the Poetry Foundation in Chicago, dash is not correct, right? And so is a colon. There is nothing that this is stating that the second one is actually expanding upon. And also, the second one isn't an independent clause. Okay, launched a mentorship program for teen writers is incomplete. It's not an independent clause. So therefore, the Poetry Foundation in Chicago is the correct answer. So you can't put a comma after Chicago, because in 2012, following a major renovation, the Poetry Foundation in Chicago, comma, launched means this kind of becomes supplementary information. The Poetry Foundation in Chicago becomes supplementary information because of the closing comma. And therefore, in 2012, following a major renovation, launched a mentor. So that sounds absurd, right? So therefore, this is incorrect also. So C is the correct answer. Okay. So I think we've completed all the practice questions that I wanted to cover. So this kind of covers all the concepts that we discussed, right? So very few concepts, pretty easy if you know them, and this is an easy 30 to 40 points on the test. Okay, so that's all we have in this module. So we'll meet in another video. All right.